guys? Welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to do an update to a pretty popular video I covered last Thursday, which is titled, Enraged by the 2016 election, my wife's feminist coworkers tried to ruin our marriage. Instead, And guys, as a recap, because I know a lot of you guys saw it, but it's been a few days, that's about the guy who got married relatively young, I think early to mid-20s, been with his girl for a number of years, thought he knew her, and it seemed like they had a pretty good marriage going on, multiple fronts. And then she had a kid. Again, things are still good. And then the 2016 election results came around, and a lot of gals around the country lost their minds, including her crazy feminist coworkers at the hospital. And they started trying to sabotage her marriage. This guy is obviously into construction or something. He took some time off from work to work on the house, take care of the baby while she got back to getting into the swing of things at work. And he noticed a change in her behavior, amongst other things. And after doing some investigating, the coworkers are trying to sabotage the marriage and all that. Not to mention his mother-in-law, who's living with them, he's been great to her. She's trying to sabotage it as well. So it ended where this guy is about to embark on some definite revenge and setting the wife straight and all that. So it continues, he says here, back to where I left off. I just found the group chat on my wife's iPhone and uncovered some text messages that were getting a little too personal for my comfort. I spent the night outside by the fire pit. I put together a game plan that night and I put it into motion. And I forgot to mention, guys, when he knew things were going on, when she was talking to a male coworker, a male nurse, I called him Greg Fokker from Meet the Parents. He went there and saw her at the hospital kind of getting touchy-feely with him. Yeah, this isn't good. So I learned early on that women who act like the modern sisterhood of the traveling twat is that they love to screw each other over. The only thing they love more than screwing each other over is bragging about to everyone in their friend group while keeping it from the one getting screwed. So first things first, I had to pull skeletons out of their closet and put them on display. Luckily for me, they invited my mother-in-law into their friend group, and having known two of my wife's high school friends, she had access to some of their corpses. My mother-in-law was already skating on thin ice and was in the process of being exposed to my wife before this happened. She was a single mom who put together a friend group specifically to screw her husband over. My mother-in-law had a prescription morphine addiction, and she had my wife believing that the withdrawals were a symptom of her autoimmune disease. So your mother-in-law was a single MOM. And an angry one. And as you said, what the hell is this? A prescription morphine addiction? Okay. And he said she's disabled. She lives with you. You're providing for her, and this is how she treats you? I could write a book about battling my mother-in-law and reining in her drug problem. Suffice to say, she lost access to those medications, and I'm the reason for that. She was clean for 3 years by the time the shit hit the fan. That mother-in-law is a piece of garbage. You should have thrown her out, but we'll see how this goes. So the first thing I did was get my hands on my mother-in-law's phone. She often had issues with her phone and her car, and I was the one who fixed everything. So I knew her passcodes and had plenty of opportunity. I stuffed part of the cotton swab in the charge port of her phone when she wasn't looking, and later that day she asked me to fix it. I told her I would get back to it tomorrow. With her phone, I was able to get a hold of plenty of text messages that were useful. She had a separate group chat with the same women that didn't include my wife. Good God. I'm wondering, I'm going to probably guess that the mother-in-law here isn't super old. Because at this point, when this is going on, I think your wife was mid-20s. So probably this single mom, mother-in-law probably had her very early on. So probably the mother-in-law at this point is in her 40s. It was an intelligence gathering jackpot. They were openly coordinating what to tell my wife. They were swapping stories about guys they cheated on their husbands with. On top of this, my mother-in-law and my wife's friend Jenny from high school were swapping stories about things they lied to my wife about. Jenny had got my wife's first boyfriend drunk and slept with him. Oh my God. Great friends, huh? The old saying, don't try to understand women. Women understand women. They hate each other. My mother-in-law was telling the group about how she won her divorce against my father-in-law. She went into great detail about how she made things up in court. Of course, she made it easy for me to prove that she was lying to my wife about my day-to-day work. She bragged about doing so to these women. Yeah, the mother-in-law was making up all this crap and telling these girls and the wife and all that. Later, I returned the phone and moved on to my next goal. I put cameras up in the house to record everything that I was doing. My mother-in-law was bitching to my wife almost every day at that point about watching my son, all day. So I proved otherwise and gave her some time to hang herself. My primary concern was what my wife was up to and what she had done up to that point, both before this guy and after. So in the other story, I recall this guy had some deal breakers early on, and one of them obviously was cheating. Now, obviously in his mind, that meant physical cheating. But there's cheating before it actually gets physical. But some people, they look at it in different ways. But I sure as hell don't. So the next chance I got, I had installed some spyware on my wife's phone. Before going into construction, I was originally going to go into computer science. I'd done well in high school and loaded up my scheduled classes on computer programming, etc. I had several programming languages under my belt, and I had also dabbled in electrical engineering. And obviously, you were just simply a tech guy anyway. Bugging your phone was a piece of cake. It wasn't hard to get a simple program up and running to record everything that was being said near the phone. The program was running in the background the entire time she had her phone. The only limitation was that I couldn't record phone calls or anything while a call was in progress. The audio files were saved to her phone during the day. I pulled them off the phone at night. I only needed a few days of recordings to address my concerns. So it didn't take a whole lot of time for a lot of red flags to come about and a lot of evidence that you needed. I had plenty of conversations recorded from lunchroom chats, and I got a recording of her and the creep talking on the last day. My wife started to push back against her friends. It wasn't forceful at first, but she told them that divorce was off the table. She was also starting to push back on their attempts to get her to sleep around. Her text with the guy took a turn, and she was losing interest in him. They were texting over the weekend, and their final one-on-one conversation happened on Monday. The gist of it was that he was mad that she wouldn't sleep with him. Well, that's good that already, without you interfering, she's pushing him away and those girls away, and you can see how they're trying to, but still, that doesn't excuse her actions. I'm glad that she's pushing him away and the harpies away, but still. My next problem was the creep. You mean Greg Fokker. The weekend before my wife definitely shot him down, I started looking into him. He was rubbing me the wrong way. So I got to know a bit about him, and I pretended to run into him that weekend at a bar when he was out with a few friends. I went up to him and apologized for squeezing his hand, and I bought him a beer. The guy was already a little sauced, and his friends were getting ready to leave. He stuck around and kept chatting with me. I had noticed him unlock his phone. He was using his fingerprint. I bought him a few more drinks to get him good and drunk. It got to the point where he was struggling to work on his phone, and I asked him if he wanted me to call someone for him and after he failed a few times. He handed me his phone and told me to call his friend. As luck would have it, he passed out for a few minutes. Well, he was really hammered there. I had permission to use his phone, so I took a minute to look through it. Man, what a dumbass. And yes, guys, there are people that stupid out there, or so sure of themselves. This guy probably thought it was funny that the husband of the woman he was trying to hook up with was there, and they were having a drink together. He's probably thinking, ha, ha, ha. Got overconfident, and now look what's happening. I saw a few messages with my wife. The other parts of conversations I had already seen. Then I came across a conversation he was having with a gal who was younger than someone he should be talking to. Aha. He was offering to sell her pills that he was stealing from work. I set the phone down and thought it over for a minute to figure out how to handle that. I ended up screenshotting the conversation and used his email to send the screen grabs to the local police department. He was arrested a few weeks later. Back to the sisterhood. I was keeping tabs on them over the next couple weeks using my mother-in-law's phone on and off. I had enough evidence to clear my name and with my wife, but that wasn't good enough for me. If I was going to give my wife another chance, she was going to cut them off without my direct intervention. I was paying close attention to what they were saying about me, though, and I didn't exactly let it go unanswered in the meantime. While watching the messages roll in, I noticed a few things. First, none of these women know what it means to work a hard day's labor. They kept going on and on about the pay gap. What struck with me the most was that my wife was talking about how hard she has seen me work. When she would bring that up, these women all insisted that work women do is harder. Yeah, backbreaking work in the hot sun or in the freezing cold and the elements versus working in a nice, cool, air-conditioned building or a warm building during winter. Yeah, not exactly the same. He says, having taken care of my son mostly on my own the last few months while doing the typical mom things on top of some hard day's labor at home, I found the delusional thinking to be almost funny, if it were not taking a toll on my marriage. Eventually, I noticed the fundamental misunderstanding that seemed to fuel the delusion was that women almost all tend to believe that an hour of work done by one person is just as difficult and just as valuable as an hour of work done by another person. It never occurred to them that a guy shoveling ditches on a hot day is working harder than a secretary working in an air-conditioned office. Thank you. Or a guy working in a hot factory, or a guy working construction. He's not digging ditches, but he's out in the hot sun. Or an air conditioning repair guy going into a hot attic in August in South Florida. I can go on and on here. The other common trend I notice is that they love to talk up how difficult it is doing domestic work. Vacuuming is so hard in the air-conditioned house. Yet they were actively dodging each other over the most trivial shit related to raising kids and keeping a house. It was a neurotic mess of crazy women pressuring one another to keep up with the latest mommy trends, as they called them. Mommy trends. God. He says, guys, let me tell you something. Women like this are not good mothers. They're not good wives, and they spread their nonsense like a cancer through society. Brother, you're preaching to the choir here. Though I will say, reading their conversations informed me of exactly where to hit them to strike a nerve. I got my opportunity to retaliate a bit when I caught a message about my wife, my mother-in-law and Jenny planning a play date for my son and her kids. Jenny convinced my wife that kids need to start playing together as soon as possible. So she invited my wife and my mother-in-law over to her place that Saturday. Meanwhile, your kid's probably under 1 year old, I think. I know that Jenny was a neurotic, neat freak. I also knew something that most women like that do not know about. One of my ways of making money on the side, while my wife was in college, involved repairing appliances and selling them on Craigslist. Washing machines, dishwashers, vacuums, refrigerators, you get the picture. I would often get these appliances from homes with women like Jenny, ready to discard them for a new model. Let me tell you this, almost none of them knew how to maintain their appliances with how disgusting they were. They weren't really cleaning anything in their home. So basically they run the vacuum, and they run the washing machine or the dishwasher or all these other things and never actually clean them or change filters or do anything remotely that wouldn't be a lot of work. And they just, no, well, it's not working anymore. They get rid of it. Meanwhile, just maintain it, clean it up, and you're good. So when it came time for my wife and mother-in-law to go to Jenny's, I unplugged the battery to my wife's car and told them that I would give them a ride and go with. They didn't care much for the idea, but I had to ask Jenny, and she said she was okay with it. The women put the kids in the living room, and they all went into the kitchen. I took the opportunity to play with my kid for a few minutes before I asked to use the bathroom. I was planning on putting on a little show for the girls, but I needed a starting point that seemed natural. Her washer and dryer were in the common bathroom next to the living room. It was a top loader, and it was open. I stuck my finger between the drum and the basket, and there was a familiar slime that I had seen many times before. A putrid mixture of soap scum, old body fluids, and God knows what else. She didn't know how to properly clean her washing machine. I used the sink to clean up and noticed the one issue was clogged. I popped it off and cleaned it out. I found the starting point of my show. I went to Jenny and told her that I noticed her sink had no water pressure and that I hoped that she didn't mind, but I went ahead and fixed it for her. She knew exactly what I was talking about, and she was thrilled. I bet she was. She's like, shit, free appliance repair here. Even though in her mind this guy's a useless piece of crap, I'll let him fix my stuff. While she was talking, I saw my next opportunity. Her dishwasher was open, and I could see a piece of pasta sticking out of the trap. She also didn't know how to clean the dishwasher. I waited for a few seconds, and eventually she did what I had expected her to do. She asked if I wouldn't mind doing a few more things for her. I took the opportunity to hijack the list that she was concocting for me, and I pointed to her dishwasher. He has a point for all this, guys, so bear with me with the storytelling. I cut her off and said, yeah, sure, but real quick, I noticed your husband hasn't done maintenance on your dishwasher in a while. I grabbed some paper towels, pulled the bottom dish rack out, popped the lower sprayer off, and had the trap opened up before she could even process what was going on. I reached in and found a nice and rotten clump of old food. I'm sure that smelled disgusting. It smelled absolutely rank. All three of them were shrieking at the sight. Jenny had a clean glass in her hand, and she started to dry heave. I asked her if she used the dishwasher on her kids' bottles and sippy cups. All three of them took off running into the living room. Ugh. So I took the opportunity to walk over to where my mother-in-law was standing and snapped a picture of the dirty trap in the dishwasher. I then went ahead and cleaned it out good as new. They all came back into the kitchen, instead looking stressed and disgusted. I took the opportunity to let Jenny know that maybe I should check her other appliances for similar maintenance issues. They followed me into the bathroom, where I ran a paper towel between the drum and the basket. I handed Jenny the paper towel and asked her to throw it away. She couldn't resist the urge to give it a sniff, and then the toilet she ran to throw up. The last thing was the vacuum cleaner. Oh, God. Let me guess. The whole thing's probably full of hair, and things weren't turning and all that. I checked the hose for clogs, checked the belt for the brush bar, and cleaned the filters. The hose was particularly clogged, and the filter had never been changed. It was a washable filler, so I was able to clean it. By the end of the day, I'd shown her how disgusting her house was, and she was visibly shaken. I would have felt bad for her if she hadn't been talking shit about my work to my wife. Yeah, this is Miss Holier Than Thou. Meanwhile, her house is a fucking mess, and all the appliances are dirty and disgusting and all that. Later that night, I went to deliver the coup de grace. I got a hold of my mother-in-law's phone and went to the group chat. It had been a couple of days since I checked it, and there was a new scheme afoot. My mother-in-law and the rest of them were not getting anywhere with my wife, so my mother-in-law hatched a plan and shared it with the group. My mother-in-law often had my wife go with her to doctor's appointments. Mother-in-law and my wife actually had the same doctor ever since my wife was a small child. Her plan was to have her doctor guilt-trip my wife into leaving me by playing up her disability and convincing my wife that I was putting too much responsibility on my mother-in-law. Peppered with plenty of concern and how controlling and lazy I was, and he's saying that in quotes, all second-hand information passed on to her by my mother-in-law. The coven was cackling at the thought. It took a minute and decided against striking that night. I wanted to see what my wife would do after the confrontation at the doctor's office, so I held off till just before the appointment. About 30 minutes before they were to leave, I got a hold of the mother-in-law's phone again and fired my kill shot. I posted a few of the pictures I snapped of the mess at Jenny's house to the group chat while pretending to be my mother-in-law. I went on to describe how filthy all her appliances were and how her house was actually a deceptively clean-looking cesspit. I then pulled her SIM card so that she wouldn't get any texts while at the appointment, and then put her phone back on. So now they think the mother-in-law is talking shit about Jenny, and now Jenny doesn't look like the angelic being in terms of her messy fucking house, and it's just drama, 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 drama. My wife came back from her mother's doctor's appointment a couple hours later that day. My thinking up to that point is that her reaction to her mother's ambush is probably going to be the best indicator of whether or not the relationship was salvageable. Though no matter how she reached at this point, I was going to drop the receipts on the table and put this all to rest. She was pretty visibly shaken and angry when she walked into our bedroom. I asked her what was wrong, and I let her do the talking. Yeah, just kick back and let her talk, and see what she, has to say. She had told me about what happened at the doctor's appointment, and she told me about what her friends were saying. I asked her to tell me what she thinks about what everyone was saying, not just what they were saying. She paused for a minute, and then she gave me an honest answer. She listened to them first, but then as things went on, she found herself getting angry with them. Well, thank God for that. He did snoop around and see that she was getting pissed off at her so-called work friends, and that guy and all that. At first, she was feeling overwhelmed by being a mother. These women preyed on that by telling her that being a mom is both easy and natural to women, and that when they are struggling, that it means their partner is not doing enough. Bullshit. You could have a great husband who's doing everything he can to help out. The wife's still going to struggle with a newborn because it's all brand new, especially if it's the first child and all that entails. But I personally don't accept this whole blame it on the friends for the coworkers for manipulating her and preying on her and all that. They're assholes, but still, this woman here, this wife, is a grown-ass woman. And she knows this guy better and let them manipulate her? I have a problem with that. Beyond this, these women were filling my wife's head with expectations of being a mother that were straight up ridiculous. A significant amount of the stress she was experiencing came from these women guilting and shaming her into following all the mommy trends. The mommy trends. Yeah, just some ridiculous, harebrained idea of the week that they're all following, because let's be honest, most people are sheep. So eventually got to the point where we were talking about what my mother-in-law has been saying about what I was doing during the day and how they were all telling her to leave. So I asked her 3 questions. 1, do you want to leave? 2, if any of what they say is true, would you leave then? And 3, the last question was, do you honestly believe any of that is true? She then told me that no, she doesn't want to leave. No, she wouldn't leave me, even if it was true, but she would expect me to shape up. And she took a second on the last question, but no, she didn't really believe these women anyway. She wants you to shape up? Are you fucking kidding me? The evidence he has on her and the mother-in-law and what he's been doing here, taking care of everything, and he has to shape up? She's not trusting these women. She recognizes they're a problem, but still she says he has to shape up. So already they're in her head. I don't think she had realized until that moment that she was no longer buying what they were selling. She started crying and chastising herself. I told her to knock it off, but she told me that she deserves it. What was she like, smacking her head and banging her head against the wall like Dobby in Harry Potter Part 2? I mean, what the fuck? I asked her why she told me that they were trying to get her to cheat early on, and that for a moment she was considering it. At this point, I put all the cards on the table. I told her that the moment she started considering cheating on me, that she started acting weird towards me, that tipped me off. I told her that I saw her getting a little too close to the guy at work, and that at that moment I had an obligation to look into what was going on. It took a while, but I told my wife everything I'd known and done, much like I told you guys so far. Let me guess, the waterworks. And she's probably, the waterworks combined with her getting pissed off at her mom and the so-called friends at work and all that. Any protestations to my methods and our relationship would have been over. While she was hurting, she knew that I was within my right to do what I did. Of course you're right to do what you did. I showed her the videos from the last few days, and I confirmed with her beforehand that her mother had claimed that she was the only one watching my son. Obviously, the cameras told a different story. The text messages between her mother and the friend group were the final straw, though. The text messages left no uncertainty that she had intentionally lied and that she had done so to break us up. Yeah, because remember there were 2 group chats that he had evidence from. The group chat that they were all in, and the group chat that the mother-in-law and her harpy coworkers were in. And she gets to see. But the thing is, this girl, and I picked it up early on, personally, guys, and I think a lot of you guys are with me, I could never be with a stupid woman. You know, stupid, but also weak, easily manipulated, easily controlled, easily led astray. And I do mean like they really don't know what's going on. Like, not like they're letting it happen because it's what they want, but because actually they're too dumb to to see things, and they're easily, they don't stand up for themselves, that type of thing. I just see too many problems there with gals like that. It was this point that I saw a new side of my wife. I'd never seen her furious before. She's always been a timid person, so this was quite a change. Right there, what he just said, timid person. Timid people typically are easy to push around. And that's what happened. My son was asleep at this point, and for good measure, I popped some earmuffs over his ears because it was getting loud. My wife kicked my mother-in-law's door open a few times to try to open it. When the door didn't give, she used the knob. She went up to her mother and grabbed her by the hair and then proceeded to drag her ass out of the house. Dude, I know you got that on camera somewhere. Send that to me. She unloaded everything on her and told her to get the fuck out. She hopped in her car and took off screaming like a bat out of hell. I'm assuming the mother-in-law took off in the car screaming like a bat out of hell. Well, that's awesome. That settled it for me what to do. She won me over. I didn't even realize that I still had doubts until I felt them all melt away after seeing that. That was the moment that my wife had actually become my wife. When she became your wife, or she went back to being what she was like before all this shit. We talked for a bit, and frankly, I was getting into that woman's pants as soon as possible after that, and I really didn't want to take no for an answer. Luckily, my son slept quite quietly for a couple hours, and we had plenty of time. We didn't have much of a living room at the moment, as we were still hurting for space due to the construction. There were two options, either a bed next to the kid or my mother-in-law's bed. Well, I grabbed one of the blankets and threw it down on the bed. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you had makeup sex. Afterwards, I had noticed that she had left her phone behind. I went and grabbed the SIM card and put in the phone. I laid there in bed with my wife and poured over the text messages that were coming in from the group chat. The sisterhood at the hospital was tearing itself apart. Jenny was getting dodged on hard by the group. She responded by showing her friends' houses and started checking their appliances. So anyways, they're all talking shit about her and her appliances. And now she's attacking them. They're all fighting with each other and all that. These people that work at a hospital where people's lives are in their hands. And this is the character of these people. And you know they're hooking up in side rooms and medicine rooms and whatever fucking rooms they have at hospitals left and right during off hours. Apparently, she barged into one of their houses and caught a woman trying to take apart her washing machine to clean the damn thing. Jenny had taken a picture of this and put it up in the group chat to defend herself. They were all at each other's throats while trying to save face. What kind of fucking petty, desperate housewife shit is this? The sisterhood was dead, and as my wife puts it, why the hell did I listen to those crazy bitches? Exactly. Because she's timid. Because she's easily susceptible to influence. And to me, that's fucking dangerous. So that's it. While my wife wasn't out of the woods yet, and she had a lot of work to do to make things right with me, that is a whole other story. If you guys want it, I might write that up and look down the line, but this is where I'm wrapping this one up. Thanks again for listening, and have a good one. Well, there you go. That was quite entertaining. But for me, the wife would not be out of the doghouse. No. I had two major problems. One, how susceptible she was to influence, and look what that did. Look how close it got to tearing apart your marriage because she's just so easily manipulated because she's weak. And two, her talking to that guy and getting obviously touchy-feely. And yeah, I know you were looking through all the texts and everything like that, and you would probably think that she'd be bragging if they actually hooked up. But there's just too much shit going on behind the scenes with him. But on the basis that they didn't hook up or kiss or anything, and eventually you saw through the things that she was pushing him away. And obviously, I'm assuming after this that she no longer worked there anymore, I'm assuming, and she tore away the sisterhood. That's all good and everything, but at the end of the day, it's your marriage, all that, but I'd have some major problems with her character issues with regards to that. And about the mother-in-law, I'm glad the mother-in-law is out. The mother-in-law stormed away in the car, but obviously, I'm assuming mother-in-law was gone at this point. But here's the deal. Did your wife cut the mother-in-law off? Because otherwise, mother-in-law is going to be a problem for you forever. So I guess you can address these things in a future video. But anyhow, that was a good one, guys. And to show you how so many harpies lost their minds as a result of the 2016 election. And there you go. We all remember it. And now we're at 2.0, that version. You've already seen a couple of videos I've done on the subject and how, well, let's just say I'm going to have content for years based on how some of these people are losing their minds all over again. But it looks like this time around, a lot of the masses aren't tolerating that shit of the mind losing and everything. But anyhow, so bro, I'm glad things worked out the way you wanted to work out. I do disagree with some things, but anyhow, I wish you all the best. Now, I know this all happened like 7 or 8 years ago. So obviously, if you had divorced or things get worsened and didn't get better dramatically, you'd be telling me so. But anyhow, gentlemen, if you'd like to hear more details about his situation with his wife, things that happened after that, because that was the main way to dismantle the harpy group, let him know in the comments section. I assure you, he definitely will. So I hope you enjoyed these 2 parts, guys. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And if you got a good story you want to share or a question you want to ask me about a situation, email me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. And if it's a good one, I will definitely cover it. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.